I've always liked to think of the River Deben as a nice clean place and a place that I can enjoy bathing in and having fun. But now it's something that I question. I do feel very cautious, and I'm thinking about this spring and summer and thinking about, you know, whether I'm not going to be having the same enjoyment. There was an occasion, I think it was the first swim of the year, which was at slack water, high tide, which is the time I prefer to swim at high tide with the fresh water coming in. Not only did I have a skin rash, I actually felt very unsteady when I came out of the water. I was quite disorientated. That was really quite worrying. In fact, the harbour master thought I was having a stroke, but it wasn't a stroke.
So I think there's something very interesting around our acceptance of pollution. The whole story around air pollution and the link between air pollution and ill health, what's gone on in London. But unfortunately, rivers have forgotten that pollution in our water that affects us as swimmers isn't seen, people aren't so conscious of it, and there isn't as much awareness of that damage. But there's no doubt that, you know, those of us who know the river would choose not to swim at certain points of the tide, low tide in particular. Would choose not to swim at Woodbridge if it had been raining and you're concerned that there'd be overflow of raw sewage into the water.
We obviously heard about all of the sewage discharge that was happening in rivers around the UK, so we started looking at what was happening in our own river. What we found, disturbingly, is that there are high levels of E. coli and nitrates all along the River Deben. We've set up a little programme in conjunction with a lot of the parish councils that touch the Deben, and they are now beginning to do their own testing all the way up along the river from here up to Debenham.
Well, it's popular here. We have a footpath across the fields. These are grazing meadows, but people do walk. They have picnics, and children and young people do jump in and out of the river on a hot day. We live in a beautiful area. We look after our landscape. I think it's incumbent on us to do our best to ensure that the water quality is safe and that we've got clean water. Yoghurt pot, which is sterilised, and fill this with water. So we've got to make sure it's not contaminated. It's quite a long way down there. E. coli may not be an issue for nature at large, but it is an issue for humans, and it can lead to nasty infections. So if we know that people are enjoying being in the water, then we want to make sure it's safe for them. You don't need a huge amount of water, but I think we've probably got enough. Then we seal the test tube, and we need to write the date in the plate. We take our water samples to colleagues in Woodbridge at the moment, where they are tested.
Well, we've got your sample incubated for 24 hours, and I'm afraid we've got quite a lot of E. coli on it. We've got 13 colonies formed after 24 hours in the incubator, and the ideal, of course, would be 0. Here we are, 13 there.
So that's not good.
We'll collate this information and we'll work with the university in Ipswich, and we will see exactly what we've got. But initially we are finding that the E. coli level in the river water is a lot higher than we want it to be.
We take a water sample, we bring it back into the lab, and then we use these small discs and put one mil or a little bit of water onto these discs, and then we incubate overnight at 37 degrees, so like body temperature. And if there's bacteria in there, then they grow and they become blue. The government guidelines for swimming in fresh waters is to have 5 of those blue dots per circle. The bigger picture from when we originally started this work was looking at not just E. coli and sewage discharge, but pesticides, pharmaceuticals and illicit drugs in the water and in the organisms that were in there. And it was quite an interesting study because the first sample that we actually got data back was from the top of the Deben, and it showed cocaine in these shrimps. But the interesting thing from that study was that we also found banned pesticides and a number of other illicit drugs and obviously pharmaceuticals as well. So there's a wider issue here with pollution within our rivers.
We'd like to talk to the water company, Anglian Water, and we'd like to talk with the Environment Agency as well. And we'd like to see how we can work together to monitor this. We're quite happy to do the monitoring. Citizen science is what we're using. We're enlisting volunteers in the town to get involved in it. We'll be working with some school children and they'll be taking samples. Some of the schools will be getting involved themselves. They'll be doing some field trips in the summer term. If you could just write the date and time on the label there.
What's the date?
9th.
I feel that polluting it kind of like ruins the environment, and like there's ducks in the river and there's fish in the river, and there's so many things in the river that are living and it harms them, and I feel that's really, well, it's really cruel.
Very disgusted at what the world's come to, like flushing sewage in the water.
It's not good for the environment. It's not good at all, to be honest. Just looking at it makes me feel a bit sick. I guess we do have to do something about it, so that's why I'm here.
When we started looking at this, we started to hear stories about people who had been very sick after swimming in the Deben, but they'd not had anything to put it down to or to ascribe it to. Now we know what the problem is in some cases.
What happened to me was I went for a swim, ingested rather more water than I normally did, went off the next day to chair a meeting, finished it and became horribly unwell and ended up in hospital. In some ways less, because they usually marsh beds between those, and that can make them. Calling it bathing status is almost a red herring, really, because the thing about designated bathing status is that it means that they therefore have to test the water every week, and that means that you get to see the water quality, and if it isn't good enough, they have to do something about it. I am quite astonished that we suddenly have to have bathing status. If I had the time, which I might still have, I'd like to go and investigate when we started to need to have designated bathing status. People have been swimming in this river for, like I say, maybe 8,000 years. You know, at what point did it become necessary for there to be a piece of paper for you to swim safely in it? I reckon it was an invention of the last 20 years, 30 years.
So what this data will help us discover is when and where in particular the worst water quality in the river occurs, to allow recreational users of the water to avoid it potentially at these times, and highlight to those that manage this system where some investment might be needed to improve potentially the treatment systems at the treatment works, or other potential land management approaches that can prevent these bacteriological loads getting into the water. What we'd like to do at the University of Suffolk as well is help look at the bacteria that we collect from this water a little bit more closely. Identify what parts of that bacteria are from human waste product, what parts are from animal waste product, and what other parts might be from background environmental sources in the river. So what we really want to do is get a better understanding of the general dynamics of these pollutants in this river to highlight and understand where the best management efforts can achieve change. Where we have these plates and they show a culture of 100 dots, as you can see here, it shows that the bacterial load in this water and E. coli concentration is much, much higher than it should be. And what this does, it poses a real risk for intestinal disease and illness among recreational users of the watercourse. And it really, really is a risk that we need to be taking seriously and prevents people from enjoying this river as they should do.
I think a number of things went wrong simultaneously, and that's the problem, and that it's been easier for us to sort of pick one sector and blame them. And I mean, what the water companies have done has not been at all good practice, I would say. But I think that we're very good at blaming the water companies and the water companies alone. I think a lot of farming practices have been very inappropriate because they have brought things into the river which really should not have been brought in. And then the fact that we're tarmacking over bloody well everywhere.
Could you give us a rough summary? How are you going to lower the sewage spills, especially raw sewage, into the Deben after storms?
Firstly, I mean, I would argue the point about it being raw sewage. I mean, what we're seeing is diluted sewage after heavy rainfall, and CSOs are there to do a job. They are there to protect homes and businesses from flooding. But that doesn't mean it's right.
Untreated.
Untreated. Yeah, untreated, but very dilute. So I think a couple of things to mention are the fact that this is where it comes back to investing in where we have the most benefit for the environment. So if we look at, you know, some of the CSOs near on the River Deben, actually in the entirety of last year and the year before, they spilt for less than about 0.5% of the whole year. Now that's still 0.5% too many, and we don't want that to happen. So this isn't us saying that that's acceptable. Absolutely not. CSOs are not the way of dealing with an overloaded sewerage system. We are very, very clear on that. But what we need to be doing is investing where we have the most benefit to the environment. Up until the last year, our shareholders didn't take a dividend for 5 years because they supported our, need for investment in the region. They actually put over £1 billion of funds back into the company to push forward, the projects that we need to and de-gear the company further, so make it more investable and more transparent. Our company's performance is directly linked to all senior manager pay. So if we are not meeting our environmental or water quality obligations as a business. And quite frankly, you know, our bonus is that's reflected in our bonus, and that comes down to being a purpose-driven organisation. So our purpose is to enhance the environment and support local communities, and where we don't get that right, then obviously we shouldn't be compensated for doing that when we don't get that right. The answer is finding better ways to get excess water out of our sewage systems. Yes, I mean, we could spend billions and billions replumbing an entire region, but actually, this is down to climate change. So this is this is why we need to find alternative ways for dealing with surface water. So this is about things like sustainable urban drainage being considered in new planning developments. It's about people having grey water systems in their homes and using water differently. It's about regulators enabling further investment in this infrastructure and a government supporting that. It's about people not putting the wrong things down the loo as well, because ultimately, if we're getting blockages in our sewers, then that is, meaning they have less capacity to do the job that they need to do, and ultimately means that CSOs spill more often. So under Get River Positive, we have made the promise that our activity, our assets won't be the reason for harm by the end of the decade. And we're well on the way to ensuring that that is happening.
The discharge that we're seeing coming in from sewage treatment works is quite astounding. It's not just in this area, it's not just on the Deben, it seems to be widespread. And profits do seem to be ahead of biodiversity, which is a bit of a shame. So that's where at the present moment in time, I'm not that optimistic until we get a shift in the way that we regulate and the way that we respect our wildlife, including in the rivers. I think if we continue the way that we're going with discharge of sewage into the River Deben that's unchecked, unprocessed, then we are looking at a situation where the quality of the River Deben is going to deteriorate quite rapidly.
This problem is at this level in the winter. It will get worse in the summer as the water gets warmer. If necessary, we're going to have to put up signs which ask people not to swim in the river at certain times of the year.
I think we know how important these spaces are. We know how important this river is. We know that the water companies aren't being taken to task because the Environment Agency doesn't have the resources. Not that it's not willing, it just hasn't got the resources. So it leaves it to us. It's a citizen's responsibility. We need to nurture this environment, we need to take responsibility for it, we need to do something about it.
Do you know, one of the awful things about being at the moment, it seems terminally ill, is I get to look in Facebook and they have those memories from last year and what I was doing last year, and almost every day there's a photograph last year of me swimming. Doesn't matter whether it's summer or winter. And you just go in and it is so wonderful. And we're particularly lucky with the Deben. We're it's just so lovely because you've got so much sky above you and the bird life is so wonderful. And it's like heaven, it really is.
Nature, it has tipping points, and what we don't want is this situation to be a permanent one, or one that moves this system into a state of real rapid decline where it will stay. For ourselves, for future generations and the wildlife that inhabits this fantastic environment, we really need to get our act together, understand through good data what is going on, and make the best arguments we possibly can for the managers of this watercourse to make the right decisions and help clean this environment up.
This is Woodbridge, some concerned citizens. The sewage flows into the rivers. The sewage flows into the sea. The sewage flows into the Deben. And the blame lies with Theresa Coffey. Bring back! Bring back! Bring back! Oh, bring back clean rivers and